A Plague Tale, Requiem system requirements are surprisingly high despite no 4K spec. A Plague Tale, Requiem story. At the end of the last game, Amicia and Hugo vanquished a twisted Grand Inquisitor to banish the plague of rats that Hugo had been able to control thanks to a bloodline curse, and while that seemed to bring life back to normal, things don't seem altogether solved. From the information so far published about Requiem, it looks like the siblings, along with their mother Beatrice, will be traveling far to the south in hopes of finding a permanent cure for Hugo and simply to get away from a region that's wary of him. Whether they'll find any help or simply more powerful foes seeking to manipulate them isn't too hard to figure out, and, from the trailers we've seen, it looks like things are going to get fairly hectic for Amicia again. The minimum requirement is quite manageable, but the recommended is something else. A Plague Tale, Requiem opens a new tab, a brother and sister action adventure about rats, curses, and life after the French Revolution, comes out in just 1 week, which means it's probably time to look into whether your PC is up to the task of running it. It's a bit of a good news/bad news situation. The minimum spec is quite manageable, but the recommended is a real jump up. Interestingly, the minimum requirement for A Plague Tale, Requiem is almost identical to the recommended requirements for its predecessor, A Plague Tale, Innocence, which came out in 2019. The only difference is that Innocence also supports Windows 7 and 8, and requires 50 GB of drive space rather than 55 GB. Get a look at the numbers in detail below. Minimum, 1080p, 30 frames per second, low settings. OS, Windows 10, 20H1, 64-bit. CPU, Intel Core i5-4690K, 3.5 GHz, or AMD FX 8300, 3.3 GHz. RAM, 16 GB. GPU, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 970 or AMD Radeon RX 590, 4 GB. Storage, 55 GB. DirectX, version 12. Recommended, 1080p, 60 frames per second, ultra settings. OS, Windows 10, 20H1, 64-bit. CPU, Intel Core i7-8700K, 3.7 GHz, or AMD Ryzen 5 3600, 3.6 GHz. RAM, 16 GB. GPU, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 or AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT, 8 GB. Storage, 55 GB SSD. DirectX, version 12. It's also interesting that there's no 4K spec listed, but the Ultra setting should be pretty easy on the eyes regardless. NVIDIA confirmed in June that A Plague Tale, Requiem will support DLSS and ray tracing, opens a new tab on its RTX series GPUs. A Plague Tale, Requiem is set to go live on Steam on October 18th. If that's not enough to keep you busy for the balance of the month, be sure to check out our list of all the other October PC game releases and events you should know about.